Saturday mornings with Danny Baker on 5 Live.
Welcome back, everybody. And following Tony Jacklin, I said, look, I'm fed up with these no-goodniks. I'm fed up with these wet behind-the-ears students you're giving me now.
Raise the bar.
I said, raise the bar. So, well, Barry Cryer is with us. And just, you know, when people say, well, who's Barry? You know, he's written for everyone. And I say, well, let's just think about that for a minute. Here are just some of the people that Barry Cryer has provided a career to. Cardew Robinson, Mrs. Shufflewick, Terry Hall and Lenny the Lion.
Oh, stop it.
And Mick and Montmorency. Now, without his... I tried to find 4 people you probably never have written
I'm
for.
here to lower the bar, aren't I?
That's easier to tell people you've never written for.
People say to me a lot now, you wrote for everybody. I say we wrote for everybody. There was a whole gang of us.
Yeah.
I never wrote alone. You know, I mean, I met the whole...
Do you have to be in a room or do you submit from it?
Well, both.
Yeah.
Years ago, I can't remember who said it. They said there's a sitter and a walker. Now it would be the laptop or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I know you mean.
Riding with John Junkin years ago, he'd walk round the room twiddling his glasses, being Eric Morecambe, and I would scribble.
That's it.
Because you've got to hear the voice.
Of course you have. You've got to be out of chat.
Yeah, but
let me ask you, has anyone, and I wouldn't compare my writing career, anything with yours, I'm not doing that. But I was defeated once. I was asked to write for Trevor McDonald at a big awards thing, and I couldn't hear him. And every time I wrote, I thought, he can't say that.
You've got to hear the voice, haven't you?
And I was defeated by him. Has anyone ever defeated you as a writer? You thought, I don't think you're for me. And it's not their fault.
Larry Grayson, who'd become a friend, I worked on, I think it was a one-off show, and the finishing show hadn't got a word I'd written in it. And the only time in my life, and I said, I mean this as a compliment to the show, I want my name taken off the credit. Yeah, Larry and I remained friends. Do you know the strangest job I ever did?
Go on.
The only time, non-comedy, I was asked to write the links on BAFTA years ago, and we had the Muppets on, Fonzie and Kermit, and they asked me to write. I said, no, great Jim Henson and all that. Well, they're too busy, but... So I wrote for the Muppets with Princess Anne over there. Who's that over there, Prince? Oh, my God. But... Also, Audrey Hepburn was flying in from Rome to pay tribute to Fred Zinnemann, the director. She'd done the Nun story. And they said, write a bit for Audrey. I said, for heaven's sake, she's going to come on and talk from the heart. You're being paid, write a bit for Audrey Hepburn. Yeah. So I wrote half a page, and then my wife and I went to do, and I was looking at the Muppets thinking, I wrote that. Forgotten all about it. Audrey Hepburn walked on, looking stunning, in a white dress, and did what I'd written word for word. She'd obviously said it was a script. She was nervous about it.
And she was following the Muppets?
I was Audrey Hepburn one night.
Oh, man.
And I met the great man afterwards, Fred Zinnemann, in the bar, and he said, hello. Wasn't Audrey wonderful? And I thought, button your lip. Don't say to the great man, I wrote that.
I know.
I'm proud of that. It's nothing to do with comedy.
In another time when the moment's not yours, I'll tell you about when I wrote the concert for Diana, right? Not for Diana, but there's a similar thing in that.
Oh,
I know.
Listeners, we're a god.
No, it is. It's, well, I'll tell you why. You've got an OBE and the Knighthoods are out today. I don't think I'm ever going to be getting one of those after the concert for Diana. But anyway, let's go back to when you failed your English literature at university.
England failed.
Why did you fail it, do you think? Looking back, why did you fail your academic
got
career?
To university and blew it.
Yeah.
And I chased girls a lot, and I was not unknown in the Union Bar. And the university was cut in half by University Road, and the academic side was on one side of the road, the union and the bar was on the other, and there were a few of us who were not known for crossing the road very frequently. Yeah. And it showed in my first year results. They were not good. I could have crawled back in with a couple of retakes or something.
Yeah.
But you never know what's good. And I always say I failed, Dan. I always say to people I failed due to the outbreak of the Second World War, which was 16 years before, but upset me very deep. But you don't know in life.
But what was the plan, though, Barry? I mean, you went there to do, your English lit. What, are you going to be
I've never had
teacher?
a plan.
No.
I had a half-baked idea of being a journalist.
Yeah.
Not into his show business. Excuse me. And you never know what's going to happen. Serendipity, or whatever that word is. We all did shows at university, and we did a rag review for our charity week at the Old Empire Theatre in Leeds. And a guy had come up to Leeds to see somebody, not me, and he saw me telling jokes. and offered me work. Now, that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been at university.
No, of course not. No.
I failed academically, but that guy...
That rod of
and
lightning.
Stanley and Michael Josephs, the brothers who ran the great old City Varieties music hall in Leeds, the oldest in the country, they offered me a week's work, and suddenly I was pitchforked into
But you must have
showbiz,
been...
and I thought I quite liked this.
The real scholarly side of you, away from the university, you must have been one of those who just went to see every film that came into town, surely, every turn that came into town. Were you not absorbing it that
yes,
way?
without almost realising it. There was a, what was it, the Scala, a little cinema in Leeds that showed all the new French films and everything, and we were very smart. We went to see all those, as well as the, the more obvious commercial films. I suppose I was absorbing it. Radio was king. Wireless.
Did you see me? Did you see people like Max Miller, Frank Randall, people like that?
Max Miller, the naughty boy, he didn't play the North much. It was very regional in those days, comedy. And my mother took me to see Max Miller at the Empire Theatre. My mother, there's this respectable Leeds woman. She was getting a buzz out of it because she was twinkling. He was the naughty boy.
Yeah.
And then I met him when I was first down in London all those years ago, and there was a radio show called Midday Music Hall, which is what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
Music Hall at midday, live. The great Miller. And it was the Playhouse here in London, using the dressing rooms. I thought, dressing rooms for a radio show, what's that? I shared a room. I was in awe with Max Miller, who wore his full stage costume.
No.
Can't work in ordinary clothes, son. He did a radio show where
he wore very flamboyant silks and a
white hat.
A white hat,
he was an astonishing man.
Yeah. And so you whatever gene that makes people starstruck and tongue-tied has passed you by. I mean, I got look who's talking, but so you could be in the presence of these greats, but all you wanted to do was work for them. Is that right? You wanted to provide for them. You didn't want to do it particularly yourself.
No, you're comedian's labourer.
Yeah.
Your back room, and people used to say to me, because I'd done a bit of, we didn't call it stand-up in those days, we were a turn or an act.
Yeah, a turn.
People say, don't you want to be on doing it? I said, if you're writing words for Eric and Ernie, you think you could do them better than they
Exactly.
could. I was very happy.
Well, I think sometimes
boy
again
writing for people,
and as it should be, because the curse, and we won't get too much into this, but I think of it's almost like what happened with music in the rock music in the 70s. The singer-songwriter, everyone who wrote their songs wanted to do them themselves.
Yes.
And I've always said, Galton and Simpson weren't Steptoe and Son. Clement and Frenay are not the likely lads. Johnny Spate wasn't Alf Garnett.
That's right.
And that separation now, every term wants to write their own scripts, or they think there's some shame in it. There's a thing there where comics think he doesn't write his own material is somehow denigrating.
Yes.
But you have never gone through a fallow period, to say the least. You have worked and worked and worked. Even like when the Pythons turned to you and said, what do you think with this, what we're doing now? Everyone looked at you like that.
But I've gone full circle, because the writing, I write for myself, and I do a rock and roll show with brilliant Ronnie Golden, and we do Edinburgh every year. We write the songs and everything, but I haven't written for a show for years.
Yeah, no, but do you miss that? What was the discipline, and is there that much difference to you if you're writing a sitcom, if you were writing a stand-up act, or if you were just delivering a speech? Do you have a different head for those, or is it just no?
I think without knowing, you probably change gear in your head. It's a different idiom.
Yeah.
The best sitcoms are about. You mentioned the great Galton Simpson and Johnny Spate and Ian LaFreniere and Dick Clement. The great sitcoms aren't about jokes. They're about characters.
Yeah.
And they're about failure.
Yeah.
Success isn't funny.
Well, class too. That's the other thing.
And class. Because you see Dad's Army.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, that's the thing. In the States, and when people try to do Seinfeld over here, or even Friends, we can't do that, because as soon as somebody in these islands opens their mouth, if it's a Geordie, if it's a Cockney, if it's a Scouser, if it's a posh person, we go, oh, that's that character. And we're good at grotesques, I think, and class. Whereas the States is oldie, and always was like that when the American comics... And you worked with American comics when they came over.
Yeah.
Was it hard, if you're giving Bob Hope a page of jokes? Was there a definite difference, something like that?
Well, Actually, the only acquaintance with Bob Hope, John Junkin and I wrote his 1000th version of Thanks for the Memory for the Parkinson show. And John couldn't come to the recording for some reason. I am now, he's off now, digressing. I am now sitting behind the set with Bob Hope, and he hasn't met Parkinson. And he said, what's this guy Parkinson like? And I said, he'll interview you from a kneeling position. And then I thought, I heard my voice, I was patronising. I said, but you're Bob Hope. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And do you know what he said? He said, I'm the world-famous Bob Hope, he said. If I don't make them laugh in the first 2 or 3 minutes, they'll say, oh, that's the great Bob Hope, is it?
You're right.
He was very insecure, and it was the aftermath of Vietnam when the younger generation didn't like him. He was a hawk, friend of the president. He was friend of all the presidents, and he'd entertained troops all over the world. And he was on a strange dip.
That is strangely, and it's taken this long almost for that to be revised. For anyone who knows about comedy, Bob Hope virtually invented the stand-up genre. A book has just come out in the last couple of months called Hope, by someone who took exactly that position when he went into it, about who's this icon, and he wanted to write a thing about how he represented square America. But the more he researched, he found out that wasn't the truth. And at last, the great Bob Hope book has been written.
Yeah, he went all over, entertained troops the Second World War, into very dangerous areas. He could have... he could have died.
But yourself, who was... speaking about... That's a good tee-up. Dying the death. I think it was Les Dawson who said, to be a comic, you've got to die and die and die.
Yes.
Is that true?
We all have failure stories. It's not funny at the time, but they're always funny later on. I'm going to do it again. Are you listening, Tom O'Connor? I'm going to quote you. This is my favourite. Tom knows this. Tom said he was dying in a club one night, and it was every joke was thudding onto the floor, and he's sweating, thinking, I want to get off, it's humiliating. And he told one joke, and at the back of the club he heard, and he said rather sarcastically, thank you, sir. And the man said, I was smacking the sauce bottle.
Bob, while we're doing this, and because Barry and I so infrequently rub up against each other, I was asking Bob Monkhouse once about that, and he just said, oh, it's horrible. And he described it so beautifully. He said, when I'm dying, he said, although I've got to say it doesn't happen that often, he said, I'm just aware my suit is a bit big for me and my body is touching every little bit of it. He said, and when I tell a joke, everyone's got a bit of business. Dave Allen used to brush off imaginary ash. Arthur Askew would step back like this. He said, I do this thing with my face and put my thumb in my waistcoat and do that. He said, I'm doing it for no reason. There's no laugh.
It's a reaction. Les Dawson you mentioned. I heard this recently. Dear Les, when he was on before he made it, and he was in the back room of a pub or something. He was having a rough time dying, bless his heart. And he said he stopped in the middle of his act, and the voice at the back of the crowd said, there used to be a pool table in here.
Now, when you see... we've gone through the fad now, but there was a tremendous fad for making biopics of comedians, and usually making them look miserable, which I just thought, it's too easy.
Are you going to suggest they're funny at all?
I know, exactly.
David Walliams played Frankie Howard, didn't it, as well? But I thought, no, Frank was funny as well,
That's the thing they can't do. The drama writers can't show you why they were funny, because A, you haven't got the act, and B...
Back to Les Dawson.
Here
he goes. I was being interviewed about Les, and I knew what this woman who was interviewing me, I knew what her agenda was. The dark side of Les Dawson. Which I never saw. No. He was a lovely man, in the same offers on and everything. And the two professionals, the cameraman and the sound man, I've never known it before or since. She starts off interviewing me, and they are pulling faces at me and pointing at her like, oh, boy, isn't she something? It was amazing behind her. And she finally despaired because she wasn't getting anywhere with me about the dark side of Les Dawson. And she said, was there a Les Dawson nobody ever saw? And I said, if there was, nobody ever saw him. And the cameraman laughed, ruined the take, they never used it. But these two great professionals, mugging, pulling faces, going, whoa.
But it is that I don't know why people want...
The broken-hearted clown.
The broken-hearted clown. One or two have their problems, but no more
than... Well, Tony Hancock, obviously, and one or two. But mainly the... pretty well adjusted. They're doing a job and they switch on and switch off when they come off the stage.
Do you remember when you sit and you first go through a script, whether, Morecambe and Wise or Tommy Cooper and people, is it fun? Did they used to read it and laugh along with you and make suggestions? Is it because equally the seductive thing of the writers' room, a lot of people like when you're just hanging out being funny.
Eric and Ernie were marvellous reading a script because they liked it. They would laugh while they were reading it. Their producer was brilliant. Their main producer, John Ammond, never laughed. He was analytical and he would sit stony-faced while we read the script.
Really?
It amused Eric enormously. Look at him. And John laughed once and Eric went, we've cracked it. The history is made. He said John's laugh.
Isn't that tough for you,
but
though?
the man was a great professional, but wasn't there to laugh.
Isn't that tough for you? I know people look at it analytically, but when you've handed over a sheet of whiz-bangs and somebody just reads them, as I understand, people like Milton Berle and Bob Hope would just go, that one, and that one.
Some comics would read a whole thing stony-faced and say, very good. He could have smiled even during it, but they were analysing.
How much of a bottom drawer have you got, Barry? Are there projects you still think, know what, one day I want to get that away?
Brilliant stuff.
Oh, really? What is it? That sitcom about the robot who's also a detective?
Oh, dear. We've got Vicious with Ian McKellen and Derek Jacobi, which is not for me.
No.
I find it almost homophobic.
Yeah.
We've gone past all that. But Graham Chapman and I were put together by David Frost. We become friends. Graham wrote with John Cleese, mainly.
Yeah.
And Frosty, who I called a practising catalyst, he put me and Graham Chapman together, and we wrote a one-off pilot about two older gays.
Yeah.
And Humphrey Barclay, the producer, read it. This is way back, early 70s or something. Humphrey Barclay said, this is lovely, and it's got no chance. Too early. Nobody's going to make a thing about two older gays. And, it should be warm and funny.
Absolutely.
Something about two older guys.
And do you still keep scripts? Have you got a monkhouse style warehouse?
Yeah,
with
but
all
it's
your
not
stuff
organised.
No.
It's piles of stuff and drawers.
And you famously don't look back. You don't. I mean, you just...
No, I don't. As I said, I don't want to live in the past, and I love talking about it. But no, I want to know what's going on now.
And if, then, one retrospective question, if, because so many have gone now, if, you got this one wish and they said, it's unfair, but one show you could write again, you'd like to just work on one of those again. Would it be the Kenny Everett, perhaps, or would it be Tommy?
Oh, there isn't one, Dan. The Kenny Everett period.
Who do you think you worked best for, then? That's what I mean. About that. Who do you think that was when I could...
Well, in terms of the joy of doing it and the laughs that went on, Kenny Everett.
Yeah.
I was interviewed at great length yesterday, as we speak, about Kenny. And you don't see much of him now. I did a thing at the Bristol Comedy Festival, and they found some Everett clips, and I did sort of audience with and talked about him. And I talked to some of the young ones in the audience afterwards. They'd never heard of Kenny Everett, and they said he's brilliant. And it's absolutely fascinating. That was a very happy time. Ray Cameron, father of Mike McIntyre, and I wrote the Everett shows, and he was the only non-comedian I ever wrote for. He wasn't a comedian, he was Kenny Everett.
No, that's exactly, and of course it's rather like, forgive me, but if I was if I'm writing for, say, Chris Evans as opposed to Angus Deaton, it's great big slabs of colour and image rather than the kind of verbal.
Yes.
What's it? And it's extraordinary that you are known for the craftsmanship.
They were
and the words.
saying yesterday
can do the visual stuff.
Sorry, Dan. Is there a latter-day Kenny Everett? Because you can see the heritage. Young stand-ups talk about Eric and Ernie and Tommy Cooper in awe, you know. But somebody said, is there a new Everett? And it stopped me in my tracks. I thought the nearest is Ross Noble.
Yeah, okay,
Ross Noble,
that's a terrific
he's
comparison.
brilliant.
Yes,
he
it
riffs
is.
off the audience, and he's like a little manic imp.
Yes, he is. Oh,
and
believe me.
He's very similar to Everett. It never occurred to me before.
That's a tremendous comparison. And how about the stage shows? Because the Eric and Ernie stage shows, and I'm not here to... But that seems an odd thing as well, because it's not as easy as just saying the words and doing the faces. There is funny bones. They really exist.
Yes.
Someone like Peter Kay has funny bones, and people like it. And they can see
I used to call it before there was a programme called The X Factor. I used to say, you can't analyse it. The great ones, the Coopers, the Morecambes, the Les Dawsons, and they've got the personality and the delivery and the material, but there's something else and you can't analyse it.
No, that's absolutely.
They're just funny.
Exactly.
Funny bones.
And I should imagine in terms of Frankie Howerd, in spite of who they were, rather than because of who they were, because, as we know, not... In that terms of sad clown thing, he was kind of a morose person off.
Oh, yes.
but in spite of that, just could go on the stage and that became the goal.
He wanted to be a straight actor, no pun intended, Frankie Howard. That was his great ambition. It never happened.
How about you, Barry? Have you written straight drama? Have you ever had a go at that? Do you want to?
God, I worked at the Players Theatre old-time musical at Charing Cross years ago. I was a chairman and I did an act now and again. And I did write, never been asked this before, I did write one absolutely straight piece, which was about Jack the Ripper. And this Victorian cop comes on, this Victorian policeman comes on. It's a single monologue, you know, and there's a sort of gaslight flick in the background. Mm-hmm. He starts talking about Jack the Ripper. Mm-hmm. But as he talks on, the audience are getting more and more worried because he's saying, you wouldn't have noticed a policeman there, would you? On that scene, you know. Jack was very clever like that. And the more he talks, you think, it's him. It's him. It was never done. It was never done.
And you have no yearnings.
I was quite proud of it, but it was never done.
I mean, believe me, obviously you're leaning against an open door in terms of the idea that I would believe the frivolous is really hard and sombre is easy. But do you harbour any aspirations?
No, I never had that. Never had that ambition. I was just very happy doing what I did.
And today, and it's perfectly legitimate because it's been going on ever since people stood up and made people laugh or entertain. Do you have a reservoir of things saying, right, it's been 30 years since that bit. I think, this audience have never heard that.
Oh, yes.
Because, I don't know why jokes are treated different from pop songs. A generation hears a new pop song. Well, a generation has to hear a new joke without someone saying that was...
And also the joke, which none of us claim to have written. I mean, this penguin went into a pub or whatever. We don't claim to have written those. But if a joke is good and hasn't got a topical... I wrote about Harold Wilson years ago. If he fell off a cliff, he'd swear he was going up. And it was not great, but years later I said it about Tony Blair and it still works.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So basically what you're telling us, you're still doing the act of...
Radio 4 Extra, if I may mention another channel. There was an Arthur Askey 80th birthday radio show. I thought, I'm listening to this. And there was a guy, forgotten now, called Lee Wilson. Yeah. Very good stand-up. And he told this joke that I'd long forgotten, and it was marvellous. He said there's a couple sitting in a pub, talking, and suddenly the man slides right under the table. And the woman doesn't react at all. She just sits there, and the barman gets a bit worried, and he said, excuse me, love, your husband's just slid under the table. She said, no, my husband's just walked in the door. And I've forgotten that one.
Oh, man, well, you've been more than generous, of course, just talking around the subject of work, but you are still... Where are you next? Where will we see
Coventry
you next?
Tomorrow. Warwick, on the campus.
You're like Bob Dylan. You're always on tour.
Our three sons all went to Warwick University and all got degrees, unlike their father. So I feel at home there, because we were always visiting to see one of the sons. So it's Warwick University tomorrow.
Well, Barry, I know you're OBE, man, but honestly, how you can not be knighted? And I mean that. I don't mean that.
If I was ever offered a knighthood and turned it down, I wouldn't tell you, Dan, or anybody. You wouldn't. That's crass. Oh, I was offered a knighthood, I turned it down. No, but so you will never know. If I have been, I'll rephrase that. If I was to be offered, I wouldn't tell you.
So he's never been offered. Okay. Barry Cryer, really any time. It's an absolute pleasure, and nobody can do what you do.
Thank you, Dan.
Absolutely. Barry Cryer, and if the poster anywhere near you, as long as we're in a radius of 100 miles, go and see what jokes are and that, because there's very few places you can do it. It's Barry Cryer.
Saturday mornings with Danny Baker on 5 Live.